Capital Connection continues now.
Welcome back. We're here with more of our Reporters Roundtable. Still joining us, it's Brenden Moore with Lee Enterprises, Jeremy Gorner with the Chicago Tribune. Again, thank you guys for taking more time here today.
Thanks.
I wanted to have you both on. You've both had great reporting in the past couple of weeks about a particular budget initiative from Governor Pritzker. He wants to take some of the land that we're seeing eaten up by these old state buildings, these old state facilities that aren't being used anymore. He wants to basically clean them up and let private real estate deal with them. And it's right now he wants to commit $300 million to this topic. Jeremy, I want to start with you. You had your story run just this past week. You focused on the old Dwight Correctional Center, old prison. Everybody loves a prison. What was it like diving into this plan, knowing that there are plenty of sites across the state that could use this kind of, or that could be open for this program?
Well, if you looked at the five sites, especially 3 of the 5 in central Illinois, they've gotten a lot of press for lots of different reasons over the years. I mean, Dwight Prison closed down in 2013. It was a women's prison. And since then, it's really just been an eyesore, just in Livingston County, right outside of Dwight, just west of I-55. And, there have been various videos on YouTube of just hobbyists and just people being enamored by, a vacant prison. Let's see what they got in here, only to be met by law enforcement. But that's the thing. It's like it's a big vacant facility, probably an eyesore to many passersby and many who are in the vicinity, especially in the town of Dwight. Then you got the Lincoln Developmental Center, which, that's been vacant since 2002. That was closed by Governor George Ryan at the time. A lot of allegations of abuse and neglect in that facility, and it kind of was part of this whole movement back then it was kind of almost like a birth of a movement, I guess, to move people from these large residents from these large developmental centers who have developmental disabilities to some smaller community settings. That really kind of took off maybe 10 years later when the Jacksonville Developmental Center, which is also part of this site, that closed down. That's been closed since around 2012, end of 2012. So these sites have really just been vacant. They've attracted vandals, trespassers, arsonists in some cases. Some of these sites have felt that more than others, particularly Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Developmental Center site. And also one of the other sites is up in Rockford, a mental health center in Rockford is among the 5 sites, where, attracted, trespassers and various crimes, on the vacant property. So it's not good for the, local officials say that this is not good for the community, for, these vacant, sprawling facilities to be at the center of their towns. So at the same time, but at the same time, the state's wasting all this money for landscaping the property, keeping the lights on. And, and so in a year where, even despite us being in a year where, there's some belt tightening going on with this current budget proposal, Pritzker has still found, $300 million, he says, to repurpose these properties and get them ready for private development. Now, I would say one thing about the Lincoln Developmental Center. This comes at a time where he also wants to close down 2 prisons, including the Logan Correctional Center, which is outside of Lincoln. So that's an interesting dynamic in that, the city of Lincoln has seen a lot of hardships over the years because of the closure of the Lincoln Developmental Center. There were, an exodus of jobs, an exodus of people leaving the town, in addition to the closures of factories, 2 colleges, and the possible relocation of Logan, the prison, up north to the Joliet area. So one of the questions I asked, it was Representative Howder, was, who represents that area, do you see this as kind of like a bargaining chip in a way. You know, you might lose Logan, but you're gaining development on Lincoln. And he says that's what has to be at play here. But we're going to fight for Logan. But if they're going to take Logan away from us, give us something. Pritzker, of course, has denied that and said this is just an opportunity, you know, for housing and other possibilities that could come to the city of Lincoln and, you know, these 4 other locations around the state.
To go with the Logan County side particularly, Brenden, the prison closing, when the prison plans were first announced that they were wanting to shutter this place, there were so many people worried about their jobs. It's a huge economic hit to that town that they've sustained so many. And that's what happened with all of these sites. The developmental center in Lincoln had a ton of people working at it that suddenly were just out of the job. They have to either find new jobs in town or leave to other places. When the Logan plans were announced, I remember we talked about it particularly that could they be looking to maybe replace it? All this business attraction that Governor Pritzker is trying to do, could he maybe try to replace it with some sort of private business? This seems to be the attempt to do it, just at a different site altogether, because no matter how much money you put into cleaning the place up, you're looking for that economic return from it's essentially almost, it's in a way a subsidy to say we're going to get this place ready for you, then you can come in and replace it.
The last May, when Governor Pritzker was up in Bloomington at the Ferraro plant, the chocolate plant, they invested a lot of money into that facility, and he was asked about Logan because there were a lot of conversations happening around that time. There were hearings happening in Lincoln, up by Stateville for the Stateville prison, and he had said something along the lines of, you know, we can't center our economic development efforts around state facilities. Obviously, you go to a lot, especially downstate, a lot of communities are centered around prisons or around some of these developmental centers or other state-run facilities that provide, you know, a lot of jobs, and obviously you have all those other ancillary benefits, all those, you know, economic development around that. And so this is in a way maybe him kind of putting his money where his mouth is, in the sense that, you know, we have to generate economic development through the private sector. You know, we can't, you know, especially as, you know, Illinois' prison population, for instance, keeps going down. You're probably going to see more prisons close. You know, you need to have, you know, economic development efforts to, you know, I guess provide jobs for people and make them want to live in these communities and stay in these communities. And you just have a lot of these sites that are sitting vacant, and I mean, the term I use in my story was they're kind of like Scooby-Doo ghost towns. I mean, they're just sitting there blighted. They're not generating any you know, property tax increment of any significance. The state has to pay, you know, not a huge amount, but they have to do some upkeep and security. Yeah. And so if you can flip it, if you can get it ready for a private developer to come in, I mean, you think about the site in Lincoln. I mean, it's right off of I-55. There's a railroad right there. You know, it'd be great for like a logistics type of business, or even like for housing. Obviously, we have a housing crisis in this state. So there are a lot of opportunities, and the state through DCEO, Intersect Illinois have really tried to turbocharge economic development efforts, tried to make the state kind of like this Team Illinois. We're going to try to, you know, not get in the way of development. We're going to try to, you know, kind of give that turnkey service, and this is just kind of adding to that. Like, if they can get that site ready for somebody, then, you know, that would only serve to help these communities. It would help the state of Illinois get back on the property tax rolls and perhaps generating, you know, sales tax or income tax or whatever. Yeah. So there, you know, it's a $300 million investment, but it could pay dividends if it works. Yeah, that's the thing. It's $300 million might scare people in a year that Jeremy said would, you know, need some belt tightening around here. But there's no way you can sell one of these sites as is. No. Nobody's going to come in and say we're going to set up shop here, but also we're going to clear everything out so we can, you know, just take all that time and then
build the factory or build the housing or whatever. There needs to be that front end investment. It's interesting that clearly this has been, in the works for a little bit, but it's interesting that of all years he's going forward with it this time around. And I think there's probably an aspect of this where we're in his second year of his second term, and there's this, he wants to get things moving on that and I guess break ground in a way to show that it's actually happening and that it's something that he wants in his term. It'll be interesting to see how it kind of proceeds in that way.
Well, it certainly was the most positive thing I heard from Republicans about his budget proposal.
Even more than not funding the non-citizen health care plan?
Well, that's right. I mean, that too, but in terms of something that actually went into the budget, I mean, every Republican I talked to in those affected areas by these site plans were, pretty thrilled about that. But I think, there's also probably a sense of cautious optimism in that, these sites have been vacant for a long time.
Yeah.
And
there's probably been a lot of promises that these are going to be cleaned
it's
up.
like here's state government saying they want to do this, or here's government period saying they want to do this, and that. And, does the average person trust government when it comes to, like you said, promises like that? That remains to be seen. That's a lot of money. And, but when you think of towns like Lincoln, for instance, I mean, they've lost so much. In the last 20 years, and their population loss has, shown that as well. So this was definitely, I remember, the mayor, Tracy Welch of Lincoln, held a press conference right outside the LDC site and was very optimistic about that. He was thinking this could be a place where we could build a tiny home for tiny home for veterans community, among other possibilities.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind about that land is the state's already building a Department of Juvenile Justice facility on that land as well. But, so we have that, and we have, it's also, one of the things the mayor talked about, it's like what Brenden said, Lincoln is strategically located for distribution. I believe that was the mayor's quote, and,
It's right in the middle, that's what that means.
It's right in the middle, it's right in the middle. And, but at the same time, one of the development representatives for the town was telling me that, look, when you come in from Springfield to Lincoln, this is the first thing that people see, and it's not exactly the most welcoming site.
Well, Brenden, Jeremy, thank you both so much for taking the time. I encourage you to check out their reporting on this topic. But yeah, thanks again, and we'll be right back.